So summer's almost here, you guys. Spring just rushed right in and pollinated me, gave me all the ideas. And so one of the first things I wanted to share with you is how to make a whole food plant-based fruit-only slushie. In my other video last year, I think it was, I made just one with like lemonade. And so that had things in it that a lot of you don't want to have. Now, we're talking more about the Ninja Creami Deluxe in this particular video. However, I'm going to link below on how you could do this in just the original or the breeze. Just so you know, this is an original pint, this is a deluxe pint. And so this is a 3-cup pint, which is actually nonsensical, but there you have it. I didn't name it, so it's not my fault. Just to start out, because so many people ask which is better, it's not which is better, it's what fits better in your freezer. How big is your family? If there's just 2 of you, an original is just fine. This has 1 extra cup. As far as making these slushies, it has some markings on it to make it a little bit easier for slushies, creamy chinos, all kinds of things like that. But you don't have to have it. So I could just fill up half of this pint, the real pint, the 2-cup one, and then we could spin it, and then I could add some milk, non-dairy milk like soy milk, almond milk, oat milk. If I wanted to make a creamy chino, I could add water in there, sparkling water. Any of the things I can do here, you can do there. So what we're going to do is make a slushie, and what we're going to do is make it with pear. So these pear halves, and these I just got at Walmart, and they're in 100% juice. It's a 15-ounce can. I got a bunch of fresh strawberries. We're going to start with about a cup. I'm assuming if I squish these down, this would be about a cup. So one thing that when we're making whole food plant-based Ninja Creami things versus not, is we're not using a lot of fat and a lot of sugar. So to keep it from freezing solid and breaking our expensive Ninja Creami, we're using fiber. In my first cookbook, my first Ninja Creami cookbook, I actually make a pear strawberry sorbet. And this is going to work really similarly to that. And while you don't have to blend things to go into your Ninja Creami, I encourage you to do it. It's worth the effort, because what can happen is then something gets stuck in these little feet, and you'll have something chewy. It also, things will set differently, and it won't be just as good. And it's very easy. I'm using the Beast, and there's going to be an unboxing of the Beast. So a can is about 1.5 cups. So this is just pear halves and juice. You could have diced pear, but I find this the most often. In some recipes, I've even just used the pear for sweetening and saved the juice for something else. And I'm going to put those strawberries in there. Okay, and then we're going to just blend it up. The first step of a lot of these are just really ridiculously simple. Right, and we'll see this blend all together. And I like the Beast too, because if I just go and rinse this container out really quickly, it's just going to be easy peasy. So what I usually do is I taste my creation. That's really good. It definitely has a strawberry forward taste, because I'm tasting to see, is the pear overwhelming? One of the reasons of using pear as a base for sorbets and things like that, and for sweetness, is that pear flavor is so delicate, it doesn't really overwhelm the other flavors. And so that's something you're going to be playing with. If you didn't have pears or access to it, you could use applesauce as well and try that. Again, you might need to have a little different strawberry to applesauce ratio to get the flavor. The most important thing is to taste the strawberries. We are going to be adding some water when we blend this into a slushy, so I want to make sure the flavor is there, if that makes sense. Okay, let me get a spatula, because I'm queen of the spatulas. I'm just going to get anything that might be in here. It's not really a big deal to use your blender because it's going to wash up so easily. We're not using coconut milk or different things like that. So I want you to kind of see, I think this might help. So see how it says scoopable max fill and drinkable pour in? So the freeze fill line here, which looks similar to the regular line on the original, if we're doing drink where we're going to add liquid here, we don't want to go over this line. That's all that's saying. So let's see how close I am. Pretty darn close. I have a little bit left over, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to put the lid on, lids on. We're going to freeze it in a flat area in our freezer for at least 24 hours. You do not have to use it within 24 hours. In fact, I've used it weeks later. It's just going to dry out just a little bit. So that's all you need to know. So that's the whole beginning of making this. Easy peasy. So when you're making a slushy, you don't want to go past this line. And we'll go ahead and spin this, then we'll make one, because that way I can show you that. But if there's a volcano, this is another thing we talk about. There's a hump. Some people just leave these covers off, but I'm not doing that. So it's easy enough just to take a spoon and level it out. Some people do it, some people don't. I always do it, and I've never had any misalignment of the blade that caused any scratches in my pints. So also what can happen is, because that rod is coming straight down, if the blade gets angled funny, that can cause problems with the machine. And I just pulled this out of the freezer, right? This isn't thought out. This is just how easy it is. And this isn't even one that has soy or cashew or anything in it. This is just pears and strawberries. And I'm just leveling that off a little bit. So since I'm going to make a slushy out of this, I'm just going to pour some water in. But like I said, this could be made into a daiquiri. I could put non-alcoholic rum in there. But I'm going to put water. You could also put like a sparkling wine or something like that. I'm going to fill it up to the line. And I may still need some more liquid. These are pretty thick, which is the way I like things, but you may be different. Okay, so let's show this. Everybody's getting their, relearning how to use their Ninja Creami. So you have to put it on here and you're going to wiggle it. And so see how it goes there? And it clicks. And then there's a little button here I can click to open it up. Okay, so with the Deluxe, you slide it in, and then I'm going to twist it, and it comes up, and you heard the click, right? And then the install light goes away, and we're just going to do slushy, and then I'm going to press this button. Usually you press the other buttons on the original, but this, you press this, and it's going to start, and I will try to angle it where you can see. One of the questions I get a lot about the Deluxe is, how do I change recipes for the original to the Deluxe? So you just have to times them 1.5 if you want to fill up the whole thing. If you want 3 cups of prepared Ninja Creami goodness. But if you don't want to math, you can just put use the same original recipe in there. You just won't get as much. So if it's just you, it doesn't really matter. So that's one of the things that's kind of important to know. With some of the things we're doing for whole food plant-based, you know, there's not a huge difference between gelato and ice cream, or sorbet and Italian ice, because we're not making gelato with eggs. We're not adding extra sugar, extra whatever. So the most important thing for us to think about is making something really delicious and tasty and yummy. One of the things, if your stuff is powdery, there are a few different things. One, you may need to add some liquid. That liquid could be non-dairy milk, it could be water, it could be whatever you want it to be. It could even be liquid sweetener if it's not sweet enough, being maple syrup, date syrup, or some date paste. But if it's powdery instead of creamy, it's not really the machine's fault. It could be that it's frozen too solid, and maybe your freezer freezes really cold and you need to leave it out a little while. It could also mean that your mixture was dry. It could mean, for me, this happens a lot, that I have older mixtures, like we're actually cleaning out the freezer from some mixtures from last year. And those I know are going to be powdery, and so I'll respin them, add a little bit of non-dairy milk, respin again. And if you're respinning 4 times, you may need to change that recipe, or immediately after the first spin, go ahead and add some liquid. The only downside to adding some liquid can be making it too soft. And if you made it too soft, you could just refreeze it again. This one goes longer because it's fuller, but honestly, I like the Ninja Breeze that you can't get anymore. It is quieter. So we're gonna press this button so that it'll release it, and then I'm gonna pull it out, and then we can look at it. And we'll look at this. Oh, this looks pretty good. And so this is a slushy. It's thick. It's like icy thick, right? This could be sorbet, so maybe I want to add a little bit more water to it. I could have also added some milk instead of water. There is some ice wall around here, and so if the blade only goes so far, so there's a very thin wall around here. So I do tend to then take this, I use these big spoons for everything. I'm scraping the ice wall off the sides, because this is a drink. You don't want like a little piece of ice, or I don't want. I'm picky. If I'm having it at your house, I'm not as picky. And then on the very bottom, because obviously if this went through the bottom, it would be pulling up plastic. So I'm going to also try and pull this up and get that ice loose at the bottom. And I'm going to add a little more water, which could also, again, this would make a great strawberry daiquiri. So with rum extract, 0 alcohol rum, or real rum, that's up to you. Also, now is a good time to taste it. It's perfect. It's got a little bit of tartness from the strawberries because they're fresh. So a little more tartness than maybe some other times. I'm going to add a little more water in here. And if we were doing this on the original at this point, so if we're doing on the original, we would have about half of our frozen stuff. I would probably go through and spin it on sorbet. And I'm trialing out putting some water at the top. It works 50% of the time well. So let me get that one a little clearer. It'll work. I'll know exactly how to explain it by the time the book comes out. But then I would spin that, add my water non-dairy milk, whatever liquid, and I would just spin it on milkshake. Because it's already, that's like the milkshake. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna spin it on milkshake, which should be a little less loud too. The pints are bigger, wider, deeper. That's why it takes more time for it to spin too. So that's more loud, if that's something. So I'm gonna press full, and then I'm just gonna put it on milkshake. That's just 2 minutes of, and the minutes are how fast that's going. It's going to go down fast. So if I was doing that on something that was frozen solid, it would harm the machine. Oh, and also, you can refreeze. So like, if you had a quarter, you can refreeze it. Throw it back in the, level it off, throw it back into the freezer, and then just spin it on sorbet, light ice cream, whatever you were using to begin with. And so, yeah, and here's the thing, as it melts more, as you respin it more and more, it melts it some, which gives it some liquid, if the pint isn't dry already. And so, always, if it looks Dippin' Dot, I usually add probably 1 to 2 tablespoons, and then if I need to add more again, I will. But it really makes things easier. Okay, press in, pulling it out. And I could have used slushy or milkshake. I just used milkshake to show you that, you know, we can do what we want. And see, to me, this is a little bit better consistency. It's still very much like an icy. And I'll show you, I'm just moving this out of the way. Can you guys hear them mowing the yard outside? It's the neighbor's yard. Okay, so it's still very tight, and I like it that way. So if you did not, you wanted it even looser, you could, but it's gonna melt. And one of the things I was trying to think of too is, you know, I always think of slushies having sugar, and this, it's not that there's no sugar in fruit or pears or anything like that, but it is the least refined of the sugars. And I'm always trying to get more fruit in Cheryl. And if you're trying to get fruit and your kids are getting them to just drink more, this can be really nice. Now, what you can't do is just freeze water in here. You can't just freeze like iced tea. You could blend a tea, herbal or black tea, with a can of these pears and make a slushy out of that. So you need something that is helping it not freeze completely solid like ice, which is going to break it. And I already looked at this, but I'm looking again. I had a bad straw experience when I was driving. It's very thick, and it would make a really nice mocktail too. And I probably could have even gone down a little bit more as far as how much liquid was in there. And that's something you can figure out. And if you, let's say you made all this and you were going to have a party and your party got canceled, you can still spin it, take half out, put in a different container, use the milkshake setting, and freeze this back solid. If I made slushies, it's gonna be kind of watered down, but honestly, not really. I wouldn't worry about it too much, and you could respin that again too. I made fresh raspberry matcha creamicino for my breakfast. Well, my breakfast caffeine is really what it is. I have a tiny amount of caffeine, and I just poured some extra milk in there instead of running it again. I was like, I'd like this to loosen up, so I just poured some water in here, and I can just loosen it up. So if somebody in your house likes it thick, 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 and somebody likes it thinner, you can fix that, because that's still delightful. It's also delightful just to drink out of a fancy glass.